Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take complex history, cut through the noise, and really find those insights that stick with you. And today we are diving deep into the life of Jafar ibn Abi Talib. I mean, here's a man who was just foundational to the earliest days of Islam.
Absolutely. He's one of those figures whose impact just resonates so far beyond his actual years. He was known for his nobility, his striking resemblance to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and this incredible way he had with words, especially when the faith was in crisis.
Okay, so how are we breaking this down?
We're looking at 5 key phases. First, his early life, which was really challenging, and his connection to the Prophet, peace be upon him. And then his leadership during the migration to Abyssinia.
A crucial migration.
And then the big one, that life-saving speech he gave before the Negus. After that, his triumphant return to Medina and how he became known as the father of the poor. And finally, his heroic martyrdom at the Battle of Mu'tah.
So our mission today is to really understand how one person could be both this profoundly compassionate figure and at the same time a fearless diplomat who set the standard for moral leadership.
That's the core of it.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
Jafar's story, it doesn't begin with luxury. It actually begins with pretty immense hardship.
It does. His father, Abu Talib, was, a man of great standing, a leader in the Quraysh, but he was also quite poor, and he had a very large family to support.
And things get worse, right?
Exactly. The sources talk about this severe, prolonged drought that hits the Arabian Peninsula, and we're talking about a level of desperation that drove people to the brink of starvation.
Wow.
And this crisis creates this pivotal moment, and this is before the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, receives the call to prophethood.
And this is where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, steps in. He goes to his uncle Al-Abbas with a plan.
A very practical plan. They decide to help Abu Talib by each taking in one of his children to ease that financial burden.
So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, took his cousin Ali into his own household.
Right, and Al-Abbas took Jafar. And this is so important because it places Jafar right in this environment of, spiritual purity and nobility from a young age.
And here's a detail I find just fascinating. Jafar had a really striking physical resemblance to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
He did. He was one of only 5 men from the Hashim clan who were often mistaken for him. It's an incredible detail that sort of visually cements his importance.
But Jafar and his wife, Asma bint Umayz, they convert almost immediately.
Very early on, at the hands of Abu Bakr as Siddiq. And of course that meant they were immediately thrown into the fire of the Quraysh's persecution.
Which became, just intolerable.
It reached a fever pitch. The Quraysh were trying to restrict their worship, their freedom, just making life in Mecca impossible. So Jafar eventually goes to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and asks for permission to make hijrah.
The migration. And he's chosen to lead this first small group of migrants, the Muhajirin, to Abyssinia.
A place they've heard is ruled by a just king, the Negus. And they find safety there. For a while. Because the Quraysh,
they couldn't stand it. The idea that these Muslims had found a safe haven.
They were furious, so they immediately plotted to get them extradited. They send 2 of their most formidable political operators, Amir ibn Alaz and Abdullah ibn Abi Rabia.
And they don't go empty-handed.
No, they are loaded with valuable gifts for the Negus and for all of his bishops. They have a strategy.
It's a pretty clever tactic. They go to the bishops first, behind the king's back.
Exactly. They try to poison the well, saying, these people have abandoned our religion, but they haven't adopted yours either. They're just trouble. You should tell the king to send them back to us without even a hearing.
But the Negus wasn't that kind of ruler.
Fortunately, no. He was a man who valued justice. He refused. He said he would not surrender anyone until he had questioned them himself.
So the Muslims are summoned to the court. They know their lives are on the line.
And they consult among themselves, and the decision is unanimous. Jafar ibn Abi Talib, he will be their voice, their only voice.
You just have to imagine that scene. Jafar, in exile, is standing before this king, surrounded by hostile emissaries and all the court bishops. The Negus asks him, flat out, what is this new religion?
And Jafar's response is why this moment is legendary. He doesn't start with dogma or theology. His defense is strategically brilliant.
How so?
He frames Islam as an ethical solution to the problems of their society. He starts by painting this really damning picture of Quraysh society.
He talks about their ignorance and immorality.
Yes. Worshipping idols, eating dead animals, exploiting the weak, breaking ties of kinship, he lays it all bare.
It's a universal appeal to morality.
Yeah.
He's not talking about rituals yet. He's talking about social justice.
Exactly. He's speaking the king's language, and then he presents the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as the answer to all of that, calling them to worship one God, yes, but also to speak the truth, to honor promises, to be kind to your neighbors, to protect the vulnerable.
A direct appeal to the king's own sense of justice.
And it works. The Negus is deeply moved. He asks Jafar if he has anything that was revealed from God.
And this is when Jafar recites from the Quran.
He recites the beginning of Surah Maryam, the chapter of Mary. And the sources say the Negus and his bishops wept. The king declares, the message of your prophet and that of Jesus came from the same source.
Wow.
He immediately rejects the Quraysh's gifts and dismisses their envoys.
But Amr ibn al-As, he's not done. He's wily. He tries one last desperate move the next day.
A very nasty one. He goes back to the king and claims the Muslims say something terrible about Jesus. He specifically says they call him a mere slave.
He's trying to create a theological wedge.
Right. But Jafar's final defense is so powerful and so unifying. He simply states, our prophet says that Jesus is the servant of God and his prophet, his spirit and his word, which he cast into Mary the Virgin.
وجعلني مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا وبرا بوالدتي ولم يجعلني جبارا شقيا والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا ذلك عيسى بن مريم قول الحق الذي فيه يمترون.
And the Negus.
He's elated. He confirms that's exactly how Jesus is described in their own scriptures. He guarantees the Muslim safety and sends the Quraysh packing completely frustrated. Jafar's eloquence, his truthfulness, it secured their survival.
The complete and total victory. So Jafar and Asma, they spend about 10 years in Abyssinia. They raise their 3 children there.
Yes, Abdullah, Muhammad, and On. Then, in the 7th year of the Hijrah, comes the triumphant return. They arrive in Medina just as the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is returning from the conquest of Khaybar.
And this leads to one of the most incredible quotes in the sources. The Prophet, peace be upon him, is so overjoyed to see him.
Overjoyed is an understatement. He says, I do not know what fills me with more happiness, the conquest of Khaybar or the coming of Jafar.
I mean, stop and think about that. Why would the return of one man be valued as much as or more than a major military victory that secured the entire community's economic future?
That's the key question, isn't it? Khaybar was a military success. But Jafar was proof of moral and diplomatic success. He brought back the community that had survived the harshest persecution through steadfastness and skill. His return validated that entire Abyssinian strategy.
He represented the success of Islam on the world stage, in a way.
That was a very real way. And it's shortly after his return that he solidifies his other legacy. He earns that deeply compassionate nickname, the Father of the Poor.
And this wasn't just for speeches.
Not at all. We have this incredible story from Abu Huraira, who was one of the poor companions himself. He said Jafar was the kindest of all people to them, always sharing whatever food he had.
But it's the detail that really gets me.
Oh, it's a profound detail. Abu Huraira says that even when Jafar had no food left, he would send the poor a pot that just contained some butterfat and nothing more, and they would break it open and lick it clean.
It wasn't about the calories, it was the dignity. It was the gesture of inclusion, the acknowledgement that he was thinking of them. That's what defines him as the father of the poor.
It truly is.
And as we dig into these stories, we hope you're enjoying this deep dive. A quick reminder to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Sahaba Role Models, for even more insights and stories of leadership like this.
But Jafar's time in Medina, it was tragically brief.
Very brief. In the 8th year of the Hijrah, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, mobilizes an army.
He does. One of his peaceful emissaries had been treacherously killed by a Byzantine vassal, so this leads to the pivotal Battle of Mu'tar in what is now modern-day Jordan.
And the odds were just Staggering. 3,000 Muslims against a Byzantine army of over 100,000 men.
It was almost unthinkable, and you can tell the Prophet, peace be upon him, knew it was coming. He gives this unprecedented, detailed line of succession for the command.
Right. He says Zayd ibn Haritha will lead first.
Then, if he falls, Jafar ibn Abi Talib. And if Jafar falls, then Abdullah ibn Rawaha.
Zayd fell very quickly.
He did, and Jafar immediately took command. He gets on his horse, charges deep into the enemy ranks, and his battle cry tells you everything.
What was it?
How wonderful is paradise as it draws near. How pleasant and cool is its drink.
Wow.
He fought and fought vigorously until he too was slain, fulfilling the Prophet's command.
And the news reaches Medina. The grief of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, must have been immense.
It was. The sources say he went straight to Asma's house, and the scene is just heartbreaking. She was preparing food, bathing the children, getting ready for her husband's return.
The Prophet, peace be upon him, had to tell her that her husband and the others had attained martyrdom.
He did. He hugged Jafar's children, tears flowing down his face. And then he gave his daughter Fatima this profound instruction. He said, "Prepare food for Jafar's family, for today they are beside themselves with grief."
That act of sacrifice, immediately followed by that spiritual assurance from the Prophet, is what cements his revered status.
Absolutely. Jafar's life teaches us that courage isn't just one thing. It's not just physical. It's the moral strength to defend the truth before a king. And it's the physical conviction to charge into battle against impossible odds.
He was the eloquent voice of Islam to the world and the gentle father of the poor at home.
He was both.
And his legacy really is in the synthesis of those two roles. He set a standard for leadership that is just so complete. It requires that ethical clarity and that fearless action.
So when we look at the big picture, what do we see? We see Jafar's eloquence securing a future for a community that would go on to challenge world empires.
So think about that. If 3,000 men facing 100,000 can shake an empire, and one man's voice of truth can sway a king, what kind of impact can your single, clear voice have on the seemingly insurmountable obstacles you face today?
What is your greatest challenge right now that requires that perfect Jafar-like combination of eloquence and courage?
Something for you to think about until our next deep dive.
طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع أيها المبعوث فينا جئت بالأمر المطاع جئت شرفت المدينة مرحبا يا خير داع ما شاء الله we did it الحمد لله ما شاء بارك الله فيكم